My name is Rena S. Price, 32 years old, and I learned a long time ago that feelings without strategy are just noise. I grew up watching my father charm entire rooms while quietly running numbers into the ground behind closed doors. Orrin Calloway could make people believe in almost anything when he wanted to, especially himself. My mother, Vivian, had a softer version of the same talent. She never raised her voice. She simply arranged the room until everyone believed her preferred outcome had been their idea all along. By 32, I had built an investment advisory practice from scratch, absorbed control of my family's struggling logistics company without making a single announcement about it, and spent 14 years with a man I genuinely believed was my equal in every way that mattered. 14 years is not a relationship. It is a life. Marcus worked as a high-end interior stylist when we met. He had precision, the kind I respected. He could walk into a space and immediately see what was wrong with it. Too much light in one corner. Bad proportion. Furniture fighting the room instead of serving it. I liked the way his mind worked, because it felt familiar to mine. We both understood structure, balance, and the damage caused by one wrong piece in the wrong place. We built something real together. Not flashy real, solid real. A main house. A guest house on the property that we occasionally rented to family. 2 cars. 1 dog we lost 3 years in. A social circle built around people who had earned their seats at the table. A life polished enough to look easy from the outside and structured enough that I thought I knew every beam holding it up. Then there was Ronelle. My younger sister was the kind of woman who made a beautiful first impression and a disastrous long-term investment. Charming, quick, always able to sell the next idea before anyone asked what happened to the last one. She ran a commercial interior contracting firm, or claimed to. In reality, Ronelle spent most of her adult life operating on borrowed money, borrowed credibility, and borrowed time. I did not resent her for it. I just kept quiet tabs. That is what you do when you are the person the family leans on while pretending not to. For 11 months before everything broke, I noticed something shifting in Marcus. It was not dramatic. No sudden cruelty, no explosive fights, just small subtractions. Eye contact shortened. Conversations that used to wander started ending cleanly. His phone was always face down or in his hand, never abandoned on the counter like before. He started going to bed earlier, started taking longer to answer messages I could see he had already read. I did not confront him. That is not how I operate. I watched, cataloged, and waited. Then came a Thursday afternoon in late October. A deal I was managing closed 2 hours ahead of schedule, so I left the office early. No announcement, no text home. I pulled into the driveway and noticed Ronelle's car parked along the side. Not unusual. She stopped by occasionally. I grabbed my bag and let myself in through the side entrance. The house was quiet at first. Then I heard voices from the kitchen. Low. Intimate. Not alarmed. Not casual either. I set my bag on the hallway table without a sound and moved toward the doorway. I do not know what I expected. Maybe an explanation I could accept. Maybe them talking too closely. Maybe something that would let me keep the last 11 months in the category of suspicion. What I saw did not require interpretation. Marcus was against the kitchen counter, close to Ronelle, in a way that had history inside it. Not frantic, not awkward, comfortable. His hand rested at her waist like it belonged there. Ronelle's forehead nearly touched his, and she was speaking low, deliberate, making sure the words landed. "The baby is yours, Marcus," she said. "You know that." I stood there for 4 seconds. I know it was 4 because I counted them without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I stepped back, picked up my bag from the hallway table, walked out the same door I came in through. No shout. No broken glass. No demand for explanations from people who had already given me the only answer that mattered. I drove back to the office, sat at my desk, and did not move for 40 minutes. The building emptied around me. Lights dimmed in nearby offices. The sky outside the windows turned from gray to black. At 8, I opened my laptop. I have a private encrypted document I update quarterly. It maps every asset, account, holding entity, and financial structure connected to my name. Things most people in my life do not know exist, let alone understand. I did not build it as a weapon. I built it because I believe in knowing exactly where everything stands. That night, I read it slowly. All of it. Then I opened a new document and started making notes. 2 days later, Vivian called and invited me to dinner. Her voice was warm, but efficiently warm. The way it sounded when she had already decided the outcome of a conversation before inviting anyone else into it. I said yes without hesitation. I should have known what kind of table I was walking into. The 2 days between that Thursday and Vivian's dinner were the strangest of my life, not because I fell apart, but because I did not. I went home that night and slept in the guest room. I had done that before when work ran late, or when I needed to be up before dawn, so Marcus did not question it. In the morning, I made coffee, answered 3 emails, and left before 7. We exchanged maybe 12 words. He seemed distracted. I seemed normal. Neither of us was performing exactly. We were just 2 people standing on opposite sides of a secret, waiting to see who would move first. I used those days well. I have a contact I use for discreet information gathering in high-stakes situations. I have referred clients to him twice over the years. He is not dramatic, not cheap, and not careless. I called him Friday morning, gave him the relevant names, and by Sunday evening, I had the timeline confirmed. 11 months. Marcus and Ronell had been involved for 11 months. They had been careful about location, but not careful enough about pattern. Same windows of time. Same overlapping absences. Same convenient explanations. Ronell's pregnancy was roughly 14 weeks along, and the timing aligned without ambiguity. By the time Vivian called Sunday night, I was not operating on suspicion. I was operating on facts. I arrived at my parents' house Monday evening and found the table set for 3, not 4. 3. That told me Ronell would not be there. Marcus would not be there either. This was not going to be a confrontation. It was going to be a presentation. Oren met me at the door with a handshake that lingered half a second too long, then poured me a drink before I even sat down. Good whiskey. The kind he brought out when he wanted something, and wanted the wanting to look civilized. Vivian kissed my cheek. Her perfume was familiar, powdery, and expensive. The smell of every childhood dinner where uncomfortable truth had been buried under linen napkins and polished silver. We made 5 minutes of surface conversation. Work. Weather. A charity board Vivian had joined. Then she set down her glass and looked at me with the measured calm of someone who had rehearsed in front of a mirror. Rena, she said, there is something we need to discuss. I let my fingers rest around the glass. Go ahead. She explained that Marcus and Ronell had developed feelings for each other over the past year. Developed. Like mold? Like weather? Like something no one had chosen? She said it was not planned. That life was complicated. That these things happened. She used the word love once, carefully, like placing a fragile object on a shelf where no one was allowed to touch it. Oren watched me from across the table, waiting for a reaction. I gave him none. Then Vivian reached the pregnancy. She framed it as a blessing. An unexpected one, but still a blessing. Ronell is ready to step up, Vivian said. Marcus wants stability. They both understand there has been pain. But there is a child now. We all have to think about what is best for the baby. We all. That word did more damage than she knew. It meant there had been conversations, meetings, decisions. My life had been discussed without me, structured around me like I was an asset they needed to reposition. Then Oren leaned forward. There is one practical matter, he said. Your guest house. I almost smiled too early. He continued, voice smooth and reasonable. It is familiar. It is close. It would give Ronell and Marcus a stable place while they prepare for the baby. No one is asking you to forgive everything overnight, but family should not abandon family when a child is involved. A familiar silence settled over the room. Both of them watched me with barely concealed relief, as if the difficult part was done because they had managed to say the unsayable without me breaking anything. I took a slow sip of whiskey. Then I smiled. Not politely. Not warmly. A real smile from somewhere they did not have access to. "I'll think about it," I said. Vivian's shoulders dropped half an inch. Oren nodded like a contract had been signed. Dinner continued. I ate well. Asked about Vivian's charity board. Discussed freight costs with Oren. Let them believe composure meant compliance. At 9, I drove home. The moment I got in the car, I called Callum, my personal attorney. Not the family's. Mine. He picked up on the second ring. "Start the audit," I said. "Everything." He was quiet for one breath. "How wide?" "All entities. All accounts. All agreements. Anything with my name connected to theirs." "Understood." "And Callum?" "Yes." No warnings. No courtesy calls. No family softening. His voice sharpened slightly. "Then we do this properly." I ended the call and looked back at my parents' house through the rearview mirror. Lights warm in the windows, curtains drawn. A house that had always looked stable from the outside, but I knew something about structures. The ones that look strongest often fail fastest once the hidden supports are removed. Callum's audit took 1 week. He did not call with dramatic updates. He sent summaries, followed up with clean questions, and let the documents do what documents always do when people forget they exist. They told the truth. The first truth was the logistics company. 6 years earlier, Oren's gambling had brought Callaway Logistics within 4 months of insolvency. No one, outside a very small circle, knew that. To the rest of the world, Oren Callaway was still the steady patriarch with a legacy business and a firm handshake. Behind closed doors, creditors were tightening, accounts were bleeding, and the family name was one bad quarter away from becoming a cautionary tale. I stepped in, quietly. No family meeting, no announcement. I negotiated directly with creditors, restructured the debt, and through a clean, fully documented transfer, absorbed majority ownership. Oren stayed on as operational director because he knew the business and because removing him publicly would have raised questions I did not want to answer then. He kept the office, kept the title people used when they greeted him, kept the illusion. He just stopped being the owner. The mistake was mine. I thought people did not need to understand what they had lost if they still felt like they had it. The second truth was Ronel's penthouse. 3 years earlier, she came to me needing capital for the purchase. She did not want a loan. She wanted a structure that would keep the transaction off her credit profile while she secured contracts for her commercial interior firm. I set it up through one of my holding companies with a residential agreement outlining very specific conditions under which the asset would eventually transfer to her name. It was generous. It was also contractual. Ronel signed where I told her to sign and never read the clauses that mattered. None of the conditions had been met. The penthouse was still mine. The third truth was Marcus. Every premium card, every account, every membership, every lifestyle convenience he used daily ran through structures I controlled. He had his own income from styling work, but it had tapered over the years as he leaned further into the life my income made possible. He was not helpless. He just did not have what he thought he had. Callum laid it all out in a summary document and asked how I wanted to proceed. "Carefully," I said. "In sequence. Nothing emotional. Nothing sudden enough to look retaliatory. Every action needs to be something I am entitled to take, executed on my timeline." The first thing I did was call Vivian. "I'm still considering the guest house," I said, keeping my voice warm and distracted. "Oh, Rena," she breathed. "That would mean so much. Ronel will be relieved. I just want to make sure it's right for everyone." While that conversation was still warm in her memory, I was already working with a commercial property attorney to reclassify the guest house as a standalone rental unit under a separate entity with zero family exposure. It took 8 days. Nobody noticed. 3 weeks into the process, Ronell texted me. "Want to grab a drink and talk things through like sisters?" I read it once, set the phone down, and kept working. I had nothing to say to her that was not already being said through documentation. Then a mutual contact forwarded me an email. Ronell had been quietly asking around our shared professional circle, trying to find out whether I had been meeting with attorneys. Someone had talked. Not Callum, someone peripheral, someone careless. Ronell was not panicking yet, but she was starting to look around. So I moved the timeline up by 10 days. The accounts went first. Marcus's primary card stopped working on a Thursday afternoon. Then the backup. Then the third. I heard about it 2 days later from one of his friends, who reached out carefully asking if everything was all right at home. Apparently, Marcus had been at a home goods store when the transaction declined in front of 2 people he knew. I told her we were going through changes. She filled in the rest herself. Ronell's notice came next. Callum sent formal dissolution of the residential agreement on a Friday. Registered mail, email copy, 30 days to vacate. Clean, legal, unambiguous. Ronell called me 40 minutes after it landed. I watched the phone ring, then ring again, then again. The 5th attempt was a text in all capitals. I replied with one sentence. "Talk to your attorney." She did not have a good one. Callaway Logistics required the most precision. I sent formal notice to the board, my board, that I would be assuming active operational oversight effective immediately. I was not removing Oren. I was simply becoming visible inside a structure I had controlled for years. Oren called Vivian. Vivian called me 3 times. I let every call go to voicemail. Inside the company, 2 senior employees came forward within days. They had been frustrated for years with Ronell wandering into operational decisions she had no authority to make, expensing meals, redirecting small contracts toward firms where she had personal arrangements. Once I opened the floor, the truth did not need coaxing. Then I dealt with Ronell's investors. She had been courting 4 private investors for a new contracting venture. I prepared a factual briefing, sourced entirely from records I had legitimate access to, covering 2 years of financial misrepresentations tied to projects connected to the logistics network. It went out anonymously. Within 8 days, 3 investors withdrew. The 4th stopped returning her calls. Ronell lost the penthouse, the capital, and the invisible infrastructure that had made her look stable. It took less than 3 weeks to dismantle what I had spent years building around people who never asked how anything stayed standing. Then Callum called. My parents had retained an attorney. They were exploring whether my actions were retaliatory and whether Ronell's pregnancy created any claim against the structures I had unwound. I listened without interrupting. Then I asked, "When is the Meridian Gala?" Callum paused. 5 weeks. "Good," I said. "Get me extra time on the program. I'd like to say a few words." The Meridian Charity Gala mattered because it was not just a fundraiser. It was the room where the city's real infrastructure gathered in formal clothes and pretended the decisions were social. Commercial developers. Old family money. New money trying to look old. Financiers, attorneys, civic figures, and the kind of people who could make one quiet phone call and change the future of a project. For 11 years, the Callaway family had been a presenting sponsor. They assumed I would either skip it or attend and behave. They had misunderstood both my patience and my timing. 5 weeks gave me enough space to prepare something that would last. I met with Petra, the gala organizer, a woman who had coordinated the event for years and had always respected directness. I told her I wanted extra time on the program. She did not ask why. That is what happens when you are the one actually writing the checks. 2 days before the event, I met separately with 2 financial journalists. Same afternoon. Different coffee shops. Callum had prepared the document packages, verified, sourced, clean enough to survive legal review. They detailed how resources inside Callaway Logistics had been misused over time, and how Ronell had misrepresented investor relationships connected to the company's network. I told both journalists they could publish after the gala. Not before. They agreed. Good journalists recognize a structured story when it lands in front of them. I arrived at the gala alone. Black dress, no date, no jewelry. Except a simple watch, Marcus once said, made me look too severe. I wore it because severity, I had learned, was often just competence people could not soften. I saw Vivian and Oren near the entrance within 30 seconds. Vivian spotted me first. Her hand immediately found Oren's arm. They had spent 5 weeks rehearsing for this encounter, and still did not know whether to approach me as parents, negotiators, or defendants. Oren gave me a nod that tried to land somewhere between authority and reconciliation. I returned it neutrally and kept walking. Ronell was there, too. New suit, new shoes. Expensive enough that I knew they were either borrowed or charged to a card already groaning under pressure. She looked like someone projecting normalcy so hard it had become its own distress signal. We made eye contact across the room. She held it for a moment, then looked away first. Marcus was not there at first. The pregnancy was the stated reason for Ronell's absence from certain conversations, but Marcus's absence was different. He had always hated being in rooms where money had grammar he could not speak fluently. But I had heard he might come late. I registered it and moved on. The first hour was cocktails and polished laughter. People touched my arm, asked about work, made cautious references to transitions, heard rumors, and waited to see whether I would confirm them. I confirmed nothing. Ronell approached me once. "Rena," she said softly, "please, can we talk?" "Not here." "Then where?" I looked at her. "Through counsel." Her face tightened, and for 1 second I saw the little sister beneath the charm, the one who had always expected someone else to catch the falling pieces. Then the mask returned. "You're enjoying this," she whispered. "No," I said. "You are just not used to me stopping it." When my name was called, the room received me warmly. These were people who had watched me operate for years. Whatever they had heard through social channels, and in a city this networked, they had heard something. They had not heard my version yet. I opened with genuine gratitude. What the gala represented. What the logistics network had contributed. What long-term civic support meant when done with integrity. Then, I let the silence settle, and the tone changed. I announced my resignation from the Callaway Logistics Company, effective that evening. Formally, completely. I thanked the employees by name who had served with integrity through years that were harder than the public face of the company ever suggested. Then I told the truth. Not emotionally, structurally. I explained how close the company had come to collapse years earlier, how I had restructured it, how certain individuals had used the company's network to misrepresent their own standing to investors and partners who deserved accurate information. I did not mention Marcus. I did not mention the affair. I did not mention the baby. I did not need to. The room went quiet in the way rooms do when people are recalculating in real time. I was stepping back from the podium when I heard movement from the left side of the room. Ronell was moving toward the stage. Not walking. Moving. Security intercepted her before she reached the steps. It was not graceful. She dropped to one knee, one arm caught by a guard, her composure stripped in front of every person she had tried to impress for years. Then a voice screamed her name. Marcus. He had arrived late and had been standing near the back long enough to hear everything. "Ronell!" It was not a gasp. It was raw and public and humiliating in exactly the way truth becomes humiliating when people spend too long hiding from it. Every head turned. Vivian covered her mouth. Oren looked at me. I picked up my portfolio from the podium and walked toward the exit. I was 30 feet from the door when Oren's voice cut through the room. "Rena." Just my name. Across 200 silent people. I stopped. 3 seconds. I counted them the same way I had counted in the kitchen doorway. 1, 2, 3. Then I pushed open the door and walked out into the night. The stories published the next morning. Both before 9 a.m., one landed in the city's primary business publication. The other went through a regional financial outlet with a smaller audience but heavier weight among people who understood debt, ownership, and reputation. Neither article was sensational. They did not need to be. Dates, figures, entity names, documented patterns. That kind of language does more damage than outrage because it gives people nowhere to hide. Ronell's contracting firm was named directly in connection with misrepresented investor relationships and misuse of resources tied to Callaway Logistics Network. By noon, my phone had 41 messages. I read them all. I replied to 3. 2 were from logistics employees who deserved direct reassurance. The third was from Petra, the gala organizer, who wrote, "I respect what you did. I hope you're all right." I told her I was. The legal threat from my parents went nowhere. Their attorney reviewed Callum's documentation and told them the truth every expensive lawyer eventually tells desperate clients when the paperwork is clean. Every action I had taken was within my legal rights as majority owner of the relevant entities. Ronell had no claim to the penthouse. Marcus had no claim to the lifestyle structures. The guest house was not family property. Callaway Logistics had already belonged to me. There was no case. Callum told me this over the phone 4 weeks after the gala. I was not surprised. Ronell's firm folded within 2 months, without investor capital, without the penthouse that made her look stable, and without Callaway Logistics quietly underwriting her credibility. There was nothing left holding it upright. In a contracting world built almost entirely on referrals and confidence, she became a risk no one wanted to explain later. By spring, I heard she had moved to another region and taken a junior role under someone else's company, starting over in a city where nobody knew her name yet. Marcus's separation from me finalized quickly. 14 years should have made that difficult, but I had structured our shared life with enough clarity that there was little to fight over. He received what was legally and documentably his. Not the house, not the guest house, not my corporate entities, not the premium accounts he had mistaken for permanence. He kept his styling credentials. He kept whatever client list he had not neglected. He had a path forward. It just was not the path he thought he had been standing on. He moved into a smaller place on the other side of the city. I did not look into it. That part of the map no longer belonged to me. My parents settled into a quieter version of their lives. Oren stayed on as operational director under the restructured company oversight. I kept him there because I was not interested in cruelty, only clarity. He still ran shipments, managed staff, attended industry meetings. He simply did it under no illusion about who owned the structure. Vivian called for 3 months. First angry, then wounded, then strangely formal, as if motherhood could be reintroduced as a business proposal if she chose the right tone. I did not answer. Eventually, she stopped. Their social standing did not collapse dramatically. It thinned. Invitations slowed. Conversations changed when they entered rooms. People in their circles are precise about alignment, and after the Meridian Gala, alignment had shifted. That was 3 years ago. I bought a smaller property after that, fully mine. No guest house, no family history embedded in the walls, no rooms where I could still imagine Marcus and Ronell rewriting my life before I even knew the script had changed. I expanded my advisory practice into an independent firm with 4 people I trust completely. The work is sharper now, cleaner. Not because I became colder, but because I stopped spending invisible energy holding other people's lives together while they treated me like a support beam instead of a person. The messages still come. Oren on holidays, Vivian when guilt ripens into nostalgia, Ronell in cycles. Rage first, then pleading. Once, 8 months ago, something that almost sounded like accountability. I read that one twice, then archived it. Marcus wrote once too. 3 months after the separation finalized. A short message. Are you okay? That one nearly got a reply. Not because I missed him. Not because I wanted to reopen anything, but because it was the only message from any of them that seemed to ask about me instead of asking something from me. In the end, that distinction was not enough. I did not answer. People ask sometimes if I regret it. If I wish I had screamed instead. If I wish I had forgiven. If I wonder whether 14 years deserved a softer ending. The truth is, I did not destroy 14 years in a moment of anger. I spent 8 weeks making sure every person who had treated me like a foundation they could build on, while discarding the woman attached to it, understood what happens when that foundation withdraws support. I regret only that I did not see the pattern sooner. Not Marcus, not Tronell, not my parents. The pattern. Their quiet assumption that my patience had no limit and my awareness had no depth. I know better now. I still keep the spreadsheet updated. Old habit. But these days when I open it, every line belongs entirely to me. That is not a small thing. That is everything.